When veils of ignorance lift from the consciousness, what appears is the vibrant sun of enlightenment that displays the path ahead, that despite having occasional rough patches, portrays streams of bliss and is the only way to reach out to the true nature of the self. In Jain philosophy, knowledge plays the most crucial role in the upliftment of the soul. There is no escape from it, because without the quest to know, one can never have a clearer perception of things or events. In fact, knowledge along with perception is the characteristic possessed by consciousness, and to attain enlightenment, one requires the trio of right knowledge, right perception, and right conduct. Acharya Umaswati mentions the enlightened worldview, enlightened knowledge, and enlightened conduct are the path to liberation. The right worldview motivates one to seek and gain the right knowledge, and together they show the path towards the right conduct. An important aspect of Jainism, which is often ignored even by the Jains, is that merely following the ethics without in-depth knowledge is incomplete. The most important perspective of any religious philosophy is that it introduces one to one's nature, which is freedom. The worldview which sees many and the whole is enlightened. It avoids dogmas which inhibits free and open thought. Each seeker of truth travels from the relative viewpoint to the absolute one, which inculcates the shallow to deep layers of relativity. Hence, the more one is spiritually enlightened, the calmer and more understanding one becomes. Beautifully, the journey of gaining clearer perception and knowledge runs parallelly. A better perception to see and understand things, situations, objects, and people enacts as the region which motivates one to know more about the same. Knowledge gaining is a chain reaction, where each gained knowledge gives way to the higher planes of knowledge, eventually leading to a spiritual upliftment. Enlightened world is the cause, enlightened knowledge and conduct the effect. No matter what, a seeker moves ahead on the path of knowledge only when he feels an intuition, a perception, or a quest to know more. Hence, the enlightened worldview is placed before enlightened knowledge, and together they lead the seeker to adopt enlightened conduct that works in absolutely harmony with nature and determines the spiritual path. The eminent scholar of Jain philosophy, Nathmal Tatya, editor and translator of Tattvarth Sutra, negates the single path doctrine. The doctrine of knowledge alone, faith alone, or conduct alone can never be considered as the right path to liberation. Not only that, but the emphasis on the rightness of knowledge, perception, and conduct has been given equal importance in the philosophy of Jainism. For example, to know how to manufacture a weapon of destruction and to know how to save lives from that both fall into the categories of knowledge. But needless to indicate which one is right. The existence of opposites is well established. Whatever appears as the unshakable truth, the exact opposite may also be true in another context. For example, the strength, the kind of bone structure a Tirthankar possesses has a purpose of absolute self-realization. On the contrary, a denizen of seventh hell also possesses the same bone structure and strength. Needless to mention that it is far away from self-realization. Hence, in Jain philosophy, there is much emphasis on gaining the right knowledge, for it is the most essential ingredient that helps one attain godhood. Our task is to learn, to become godlike through knowledge. We know so little. By knowledge, we approach God. And through knowledge, we not only find ways for ourselves, but also become able to guide others. Only knowledge can introduce us to the soul. God, to him this journey belongs. Also, irrespective of how intelligent one is, one cannot start the journey towards knowledge or spiritual discipline on one's own. One must seek guidance from those ahead on the same path, be it a guru or a philosopher. We pass on knowledge to each other, so every generation begins its journey from the shoulders of the previous generation and not from the scratch. Every generation of truth seekers redefines knowledge a little further according to their time and understanding of the layman. Hence, even the Tirthankars are called the reformers and not the founders of the natural laws. One of the important of life lessons is to learn independence, to understand freedom. We gain empirical or indirect knowledge through our senses and mind, whereas senses observe the surroundings, the mind puts the same through the sieve of rationality. However, direct knowledge does not fall into the ambit of senses and mind. Acharya Umaswati mentions, the enlightened worldview may arise spontaneously or through learning. In our daily lives, we find few examples of the same. We observe an average child who has a keen interest in gaining knowledge. We see him as a genius after a few years. An example of an enlightened worldview that emerges spontaneously can be, we meet a woman who talks quite normally about her husband, children, shopping, and how much she loves being a homemaker. But when we meet the same woman after a few months, we get mesmerized by her transformation. Now, she talks about success, motivation, career, and life's bigger purpose. According to the ancient philosophy, the beginningless journey of the consciousness cannot be traced with logic. The soul transmigrates from one birth to the next according to its karma, which determines its destiny. Here, the beautiful thing to note is that each consciousness, despite being individual, shares the same attributes as all the individual souls, be it in the body of a dog, a mosquito, or a human. Hence, each soul possesses the inherent knowledge and intuition which can empower it to destroy the beginningless, deluded world view tormenting it. Even beings like lions, dogs, cats, and cows can attain an enlightened view and progress onto the spiritual path. For it is the soul's journey and not the body's in which it manifests according to its karma. The secrets of the universe, the origin of the planets, the beginning of the time, these subjects belong to the truth. Truth which is not dependent on any factor, rather exists. Any person who experiences the nature of reality does not discover it, but feels it and describes it with the ambit of available vocabulary. Even Bhagwan Mahavir was not the founder of the truth, but one who expressed it in the limitations of language. This is the irony of any language, that not only truth, but also a specific feeling or even an emotion can only be expressed up to a limit. Beyond that, it can only be experienced. Irrespective of our arguments of having faith in rationality, we may admit that even rationality has its limitations, and even a rational person enacts under intuition. Thinking and reasoning belong to a lower plane. Intuition, darshan, begins where reasoning ends. For example, a passionate dreamer may intuitively see his distant, successful future, whereas he has to work rationally to reach that state. However, he cannot describe logically that he already knew he would achieve this success one day. Hence, we see that perception enacts at a superior stratum beyond the conditioning of mind and regular thoughts.